Good evening, everyone. My name is Alan, November 0 Zulu Foxtrot Golf. Welcome to the Reflected podcast. We're going to try something new, I guess. Something a bit easier, maybe. I don't know. It's mainly something different, I suppose. Instead of your standard video and whatnot. What are we going to talk about here? I don't know. We can talk about pretty much anything, I guess. Electronics or ham radio related or whatever suits our fancy, I guess. I suppose. It's possible. We're going to keep it off the cuff, I suppose. We'll talk about this, we'll talk about that. Probably try to keep it to around a half an hour, plus or minus an hour or so. Oh, boy. So, yeah. I'm not sure what we were going to talk about tonight. I mainly wanted just to make our introductory recording, I guess, if you will. And kind of explain what we were going to attempt to do here. So, yeah. I guess stay tuned. If a audio podcast is more to your liking instead of a video format, then I guess it's all right. So that's what this is going to be for. I found myself doing a lot of the talking head videos anyway, so why not do it this way? Then there's no video editing, which is fantastic for me. So as little effort as possible. Oh boy, yeah. So anyway, I figured we probably should talk about something useful tonight. I don't know. I guess the weather was nice today. I mean, it finally got above freezing. In all honesty, it was actually a pretty nice day out. It got up to 30 degrees freedom. So I guess nicer weather theoretically is on the way up here in the frozen north. We're not quite the Great White North, but I mean we can definitely see it from here. So anyway, we're gonna try and keep things positive here as well. We might touch on some more serious topics, I guess. We can probably share some stories about my early days in amateur radio. So my history in amateur radio was quite checkered, actually. So much so that it led to me getting out of the hobby almost entirely for quite a while, actually. So hopefully by sharing my experiences, it can help newer hams avoid some of the pitfalls that snagged me. And hopefully you guys can have a more successful run at it. I am glad to say that I am back and enjoying it, especially now that the solar cycle is on its way back up. So, I mean, 10 meters is absolutely amazing these days. I know when I first got into amateur radio, 10 meters just didn't exist. You could fire up your HF rig and tune into 10 meters, and there was just nothing there but static. So it's nice to be able to get on 10 meters these days and hear just signals everywhere. Signal for miles, as they say. For days, even. Oh, boy. So, I don't know. Let's see. Can I think of a short story, I guess, to relate? Okay. Well, let's try this one. I'll keep this one short. So this was what was this? 3 years ago. Yeah, almost 3 months ago now. Or not 3 months ago. 3 years ago. So as part of amateur radio, I do a lot of stuff for Skywarn, and especially now that I'm on the fire department here in my little town that I live in, I do a lot of weather spotting for them as well. So, uh, in the early days of this, for me, like I said, about 3 years ago, I went out. We were gonna get some interesting weather that night, and um, I was watching the radar, and things looked like they were going to get interesting. So I did my usual routine. I got all my equipment ready to go, and packed up my truck, and we headed out west of town here. I have my usual perch about 5 miles west of the town that I live in. I like to act as the early warning system, I guess, for the little town I live in anyway. And uh, you know, storm spotting isn't like you see on TV. It's not like the movie Twister. It's actually considerably boring 90% of the time. You're sitting out there in your vehicle watching it rain. Maybe you get a little bit of wind and some lightning, but for the most part, it's pretty benign, especially up here, this part of the country anyway. But every once in a while, things can get interesting. So I went out to my usual perch, and I wasn't there for maybe 20 minutes. And I see the first definite signs of rotation. We have a very low-hanging wall cloud. Things are starting to rotate. I grab the mic of my my Motorola XTL 2500 in the truck, and I call for the National Weather Service office. That's just about 15 miles away north of me. And keep in mind, there had been an official Skywarn activation by this time already. And so I fully expected there to be somebody at the other end, at the Weather Service office, a fellow ham radio operator who was gonna be there and take the call. But there wasn't. I called, I believe, about 4 times and wasn't getting any answer. Which, unfortunately, at this time, was not that unusual. The amateur radio scene in my area was, I don't know, less than willing to help, I guess, in those days. I guess is a nice way to put it. I certainly don't mean any ill will towards anyone, but that's kind of how it seemed at the time. And especially in the moment, since I felt fairly abandoned at that moment. So I couldn't get anybody at the National Weather Service office. All right, now what do I do? Well, I just picked up my cell phone, and I called the National Weather Service office and talked to one of the meteorologists there, gave them my weather report and what I was seeing. They kindly acknowledged it, and things were that. That's just the way it was. A few minutes later, I start to see some dust starting to get kicked up out in one of the freshly plowed fields, and I knew at that moment that the game was afoot. So, and it wasn't just a few seconds after that, we had an official touchdown. They now had a tornado on the ground. Once again, I picked up the mic to the radio and tried to call for the National Weather Service office, and still no answer. By now, I have been joined by a volunteer firefighter from the neighboring town. He's watching it along with me. Keep in mind, I'm also on the fire department for the town that I'm in, so I'm on that same Motorola radio talking to dispatch, keeping them in the loop. He's doing the same for his little town, and so on. I still can't get anybody at the National Weather Service office, so I pick up the phone again and call them, and I give them my report and my location. We have a confirmed touchdown, tornado on the ground. I told them the approximate direction it was headed and its approximate speed, and we continued to kind of trail it at a very safe distance. Like I said, this isn't like the movie Twister, or this isn't I'm not Reed Timmer. I'm not gonna try and punch the core, as they like to say, I guess. I keep a very respectful and safe distance. Getting a weather report certainly isn't worth your life. Yeah, you're taking some inherent risk doing what we do, but it's in the grand scheme of things, it's quite minimal, really. So anyway, this tornado's on the ground and it's making its way southeast, and it crosses over the interstate. It's taken out a billboard sign. It leveled a small elevator, grain elevator. For some of you people who live in a bigger city, it's just, the grain elevator isn't that structurally sound, I guess. They're giant, tin cans, basically hollow tin cans. These happen to have grain in it. So, when they have grain in them, they're actually quite substantial. But this tornado pulled the tops off of them, and once the top is gone, they kind of lose their structural integrity and they kind of collapse. And so those went down, and the tornado carried on and went over a manufactured home right next to the elevator there, and completely demolished it. And then right behind that was a big storage shed which had some John Deere equipment in it. And the tornado had the winds were intense enough that it had moved a 9000 series John Deere tractor, a big 4-wheel drive, had moved it several feet from where it was sitting. So this tornado had gained some significant strength. Both myself and my fellow firefighter from the neighboring town, we did our best. Fortunately, there was nobody home at the time, which is fortunate. So there were no injuries. But during that process, we kind of lost where that tornado had gone. So our chase was over at that point. There were a lot of power lines down, a lot of debris on the road. So we were dealing with that. So. But throughout this entire event, I never was able to raise anybody at the National Weather Service office. And in fact, that entire weather event, no other amateur radio operators even went to the National Weather Service office. Later, I found out that there were quite a few of them actually that were listening to the whole thing over the local repeater, that I was using, and nobody bothered to assist. So that was pretty disheartening to deal with that. And that was, quite honestly, at that moment, I kind of made a decision that I wanted to try and improve things. I wanted to change things for the better. I wanted to modernize some of our equipment because I was also dealing with a lot of spotty reception getting into the repeater, which is only a few miles away from where I was at. And, that Motorola radio I have is 110 watts transmit. So I should have had no problem getting into it. And keep in mind, I can get into several other repeaters that are considerably further away than this one with no issues. So some of this equipment in our area has fallen into disrepair, unfortunately. But yeah, so I guess maybe in the next Reflected podcast, we'll talk about what I went through trying to modernize and trying to improve our Skywarn system in my area. It's quite frustrating. It's quite deflating. Knowing what I know now, had I known then what I know now, I would have taken a completely different approach. But we can get into that then. So anyway, until then, my name is Alan. I guess I don't know why I keep saying that. You guys all know who I am, I know. Anyway, thanks for listening to the first, I guess you could call it, episode of the Reflected Podcast. We will catch you next time. N0 ZFG.